Hi, it's the Mike Rogers Show. Mike Rogers here with you. And today we have part two of
Got you all choked up, Mike. You missed me.
our interview with the one and only Mr. Jeremiah Higgins. Jeremiah is a podcaster, a YouTuber. He does a radio show. He does movies. He starts restaurants. He starts bars. Wait a minute, Jeremiah. Do you sleep?
I do not sleep. That's one thing you can't put on my resume.
Wow. So you got so many.
Mike, whenever I text you or message you, you're up at that time. You're up at all hours. Like you should be sleeping when it's my day, and you're here. You're doing things. So I'd have to throw that question back at you.
So no, I go to sleep very early, Jeremiah. I go to sleep if I can at 6 p.m. I'm serious. And then I wake up like at 2:30.
Because you look like you're 20, so you must be getting good sleep.
I don't look 20. Look at my hair is so thin now.
Look like a young man.
So anyway, you're doing the podcasting, and tell us about your YouTube. So how does that work with the podcast? So you're recording the interviews on Zoom, and then someone's editing them and putting them up on YouTube?
I do minor edits. I'll cut out stuff in the beginning, that's personal, that I'm talking to my guest, but I don't do much with the YouTube channel. I kind of like them raw. What's different? What I like about the YouTube is we have to take the commercial breaks for the radio station.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get the very best stuff out of the interview in those commercial breaks because the guest just goes, we got a couple minutes here to talk. And they tell me things that they don't say in the podcast or the radio version. And so there's like 3 breaks usually with some fun and the beginning and the end. So I put them up raw, unedited. I don't know if I'll always do it that way, but I do right now. So if you listen to the radio show and the podcast, you get music and you get this whole, I always encourage people listen with headphones because we manipulate the sound. We love sound. I love sound and what you can do with it and showcasing the music artist. So I say, listen to that. That's what I prefer you listen to with headphones if possible. But if you do watch YouTube, you're going to get stuff that you're never going to hear in the audio version. Usually it's the guest with their guard down telling you secrets.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, is your YouTube monetized now?
No. And,
you need subscribers?
I would love subscribers. I'd love to be your friend. I'd love to hear from you. Like I said, what is you hear from people, Mike? I'm sorry.
I do
asking you questions, but I'm just curious as a broadcaster to a legendary broadcaster. And honestly, you are.
So
look you up. I mean,
I do get a lot of mail.
Do you?
And in Japan, Twitter is huge.
Yeah.
And so is a service called Line. And you guys don't use Line. And Line is number one in Japan.
Now, what is Line?
Bar. So what Line is it works on your smartphone, and you can build your own community. So it's not like Facebook where you put up a post and it says, "Is this public? Can anyone see it?" You have to create your own groups. So online, there are groups of people of like 3 or 4 people. That's it. And then there's groups of like 30, 40, 100, couple hundred, whatever. But nobody outside that group can access that information. So I've been trying to figure it out for like 4 years, how to use that to be able to promote something to people I don't know, because the people I know already know, like, we're going to have a big event in May and it's free. Everyone's welcome, So I need to get outside of them, but I can't figure out how to do Line. So I use Twitter.
That's one. I do have the Jeremiah show on Twitter. It's called Show Jeremiah, at Show Jeremiah, but I never post the shows there, and I probably should again. There's so many platforms, and it becomes it's a full-time job as a host. I do 4 to 6 hours on every guest minimum background. And prepare, probably 2 hours to prepare the show. I don't create a script, but I create a basic, rundown of what they're promoting or what, points that they want to point out and things to mention. And so I have this basic running outline, but there's probably 4 to 6 hours per show to prep. And then you come and do the show, and that's an hour, right? And then I go home and I upload it to SoundCloud, the audio file, and check it for mistakes and, fix anything that's wrong. And then we put it up on SoundCloud. And then I've got to go put that on YouTube, the video. That takes an hour. And before you know it, one show is almost a full day. So if you're doing 5, and then you've got to do all the social media promotion, right? It's a lot of work. I don't despise any of it. Sometimes I wish I didn't have to do Instagram and Facebook and these things, but I wouldn't reach anybody.
Just got to get the show bigger and bigger and bigger. Then you can hire some college student as an intern or whatever. Right. And then they'll do it. About researching people and preparation. Me too. I always do that. But my shows are different than yours. My radio shows are basically music shows. So in between songs, I might scream or yell or something, rock and roll, stuff like that. But I never interview people on my radio shows ever. And the reason being is, if I interview somebody, then I'm going to have to translate it into Japanese right there on the spot, and it's just a waste of time.
There's not a service that does that for you, that takes the like closed captioning.
They will, but my radio shows are live.
Yeah.
So
right. Well, you're a great host, Mike. I love to hear more interviews. Do you like talking to people too?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to be asking.
I usually like
the host out of me.
I usually like talking to girls, Jeremiah, but I make an exception for you. And what you were talking about preparing for shows, I prepared for you a lot. I spent a lot of time, and let me read some of these that I got. Okay.
Sure, I appreciate that, Mike.
Well, Jeremiah Higgins, circa 1930. Jeremiah Higgins is Ireland's oldest shop. The shop has been passed from generation to generation, started by Patrick Higgins in 1820, who passed it to his son Thomas, who then left it to his son Jeremiah. I kind of think that's not you.
I'm actually the fun fact, I'm the original owner since 1930.
Really? Wow. And then I found another one, an eclectic mix of retail and history. Enjoy the authentic experience of Jeremiah Higgins, Ireland's oldest store. Shop in store and online for an eclectic mix of gift items and leather goods, woolen throws. I don't even know what throw is, and fashion and home accessories. And it says established in the year 1820. So I don't think that's you either. And then there's one more. Jeremiah Higgins is a top-performing visionary with 27 years of restaurant industry achievement in analyzing business drivers, designing operational systems, building staff, and developing cost-cutting and profit-building initiatives to grow the bottom lines. Jeremiah has written and created 10 ebooks on the industry. I figured that's not you either, because you're doing a podcast and a YouTube thing. So
no, that one's me. But
that one is you. So you've done 10 ebooks.
So what disturbs me is that I'm number 3 down on Google. I've got to work harder on my Google. I got to send out my spiders and get those algorithms working for me. So
what are these ebooks about?
The restaurant business.
Oh.
So yeah, different handbook. So, what a manager needs to know, what an owner needs to know if you're going to open a restaurant. I was also featured in the best-selling book, since you're going to let me plug some stuff.
Yeah.
Restaurant Owners in Court. So there's a whole chapter in there about
restaurant owners in court. You're
uncorked, uncorked, like a bottle of wine.
Uncorked.
Uncorked. Yeah, and so that's that chapter. That was a best-selling book for restaurant owners, wannabe restaurant owners. And I didn't write it, but the author interviewed me. And this was when I was opening Fleetwood's on Front Street. So I opened Mick Fleetwood of Fleetwood Mac, opened his restaurant in Maui, and I'm a partner actually in that restaurant. And I was over there when they interviewed me for this book, but the whole chapter was about how I interview, how I hire staff, and my process. So these different little ebooks are basically manuals. If you were a restaurant owner or wannabe hotel owner or nightclub owner, what I've learned how to, and how to open and operate a restaurant or a nightclub.
Well, you do everything, Jeremiah. What do you not do?
I don't sleep, remember?
Oh yeah. So also I
don't
heard
do that well. If you have any tricks for sleeping, I'm open for ideas.
No, I don't know. I'm so used to going to sleep at the same time. I don't even remember my head hitting the pillow usually.
You work so hard.
I don't think so. But anyway, so I heard a rumor from a friend of mine that there's this Academy Award winning actress. She also won a BAFTA award. That's the British Association of Film and Theatrical or Agency or something like that. And her name is Mariel Hemingway. That do you work with her, or what's the deal?
Yes.
Is that true?
To answer your question, I work with her, and this is new. Probably the first time I've reported it or talked about it.
Is it okay to talk about?
Yeah, I'm just so sorry. I'm at the radio station, Mike. I'm so sorry here's the behind the scenes. They're locking up. Am I able to shut the door behind me, Richard, and finish this interview? Or
normally I like to lock the deadbolt, so it'll be difficult to do.
Well, Richard, we're going to be done in 14 minutes.
We got 14 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. I'll go run my errand. I'll come back.
I'm so sorry,
Cool.
Richard. Thank you.
No worries.
Sorry, Mike. This is
That's cool.
the dirty side of the radio business.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Mariel Hemingway. No, I want to talk about this, and thank you for bringing it up and asking me. The reason I was pausing was I was watching Richard try to lock me in or lock me out at the station here, as you asked the question. But no, Mariel Hemingway. I got to know Mariel. She was a part of a foundation that helped. She's had Ernest Hemingway, her father, the famous writer.
Well, that's what I want to ask you. That's her dad?
That's her grandfather.
Her grandfather.
And he committed suicide, as you know.
Yes.
But he committed suicide, I believe it was 2 weeks before she was born. So she never got to know her grandfather. But she grew up in this, the Hemingway to me is like the Kennedys, or, it's one of those iconic families in America, and the name. And, she grew up in the movie business. Her sister, Margot, was a model, fashion model at the top end, and she was also an actress.
I've heard of her.
And Margot passed away due to depression, but treating her depression with alcohol and drugs. And I don't have all the facts, and so I should probably not speak to that. But in case I get something wrong, but I know that she lost her older sister.
Oh,
so she's had suicide, and families have challenges in life, and depression and mental health. And so Hemingway has dedicated her life, really. She's an actress. She's got a new movie coming out, in fact, this year. But she has dedicated her life to helping those that are suffering or just need mental wellness, mental health, taking care of your mind and taking care of your body, yourself. And she helps provide access to doctors, to books, to online help, that if you are suffering, you have a resource and you have, to help you. And it's just commendable, so commendable. And I got introduced. I interviewed her a couple of years ago, and we became, if you go back that podcast, Mariel Hemingway, it's the first on SoundCloud, and it's the top at the top of the list there. We connected really, really well, like you and I do here. I think we just had this great conversation. I started helping her, introducing her to some musicians. She was going to do a music festival in November for Mental Health Awareness Month, and the friendship grew. She started a podcast, and it's called Out Comes the Sun. And Mariel's podcast addresses mental, physical, and spiritual wellness. And, like I said, she's a lifetime advocate for healthy living and addressing mental health. They welcome on the podcast industry experts, professionals, and they discuss different products, treatments, and stories. So it's a really, it's very positive. And they asked me to executive produce it. So under the Jeremiah Show, what I've built, Mike, is this really cool network of storytellers, like Mariel Hemingway. I have the famous journalist, Ivor Davis. He's a best-selling author. We're introducing his new podcast under the Jeremiah Show. You can find it there. And it's called Ivor Davis Was There. Ivor Davis was the only journalist allowed on the Beatles' first North American tour.
Wow.
Only journalist embedded with the Beatles. They knew him through London and as a writer there. And so he slept with them in the hotel rooms, and he traveled on the bus.
He slept with all four Beatles?
Yeah, he wrote he was just at I was gonna say it was Ringo passed away, right? It's anyway, he was just at he still goes to their birthday parties. Yeah. He's gonna kill me for botching the name. But so he's a best-selling author. He wrote a book about it. It's called The Beatles and Me. And he was with Manson. He was one of the only journalists allowed to, and he wrote the famous book about Manson.
Marilyn Manson or Charles Manson?
Charles Manson.
Oh,
yeah. So the podcast underneath the Jeremiah Show is going to be called Ivor Davis Was There. But what we're doing for the first time ever, Ivor has a new book coming out, and it's called, it comes out in April. It's called Did Daddy Do It? Murder in Malibu. So we're going to take the book and we're going to turn it into these murder podcasts are so popular.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. And so it follows the story. And this was one of his best friends who killed one wife for sure. And
his best friend?
It was a best friend of his. Yeah. So he couldn't believe it when he got busted. So they go to the trial. He thinks his friend's innocent, and the friend is not. And so Ivor, being an investigative journalist, does his own. He goes out to the Midwest and interviews all the family and the neighbors, and we're going to turn it into a really compelling podcast. So that leading before the book is out.
Well, I got an idea too. Besides that, and this is the way the film business works in this country. Anyway, if you have some kind of like a podcast or a comic book that's really successful, then you turn it into a movie.
I think
like a movie to me.
Yeah, it does. Doesn't it sound like it should be on Netflix or something like that?
No, a proper movie, a real movie.
Well, that's Ivor and I are talking about that. So we'll talk to you if maybe we can get something together. And then I've got Tim Stack. He's brought a show. Tim Stack, for me, was that I love him in was there was an episode of Seinfeld. Curb Your Enthusiasm. Those are big here. I love Larry David and Seinfeld. But he's a writer. He's writing Sprung and a producer on Sprung. That's on Amazon Freevee. Howard Stern gave him a radio show at one time.
Wow.
And Howard Stern found, Howard Stern's very first TV production deal was Son of the Beach, which Tim wrote and starred in. So Tim Stack, he was in My Name is Earl, which was real popular here as TV's Tim Stack. So he does a show called It's Radio with TV's Tim Stack. And he interviews writers and directors. And we had John Lovitz on, from Saturday Night Live and millions of movies. He brings in these really great friends of his in the entertainment business and gets kind of a behind the scenes, what do writers go through in a writing room and, all this, what was it like starting on Saturday Night Live? And you get these great stories from some really big A-list stars and writers. And that's under the Jeremiah Show. We have Mr. Restaurant, which interviews top chefs. And these are kind of underneath. Basically, I give them my mic and they do their own little show. And we're a little family. So Mariel Hemingway and her podcast with Melissa Yamaguchi, Out Comes the Sun, is the newest to join the family. And, I just love this. I love this business. I love talking to people and creating these great, hopefully great shows that tell really neat stories from people all different areas of the world, as long as they're interesting and we tell the story.
That's really fantastic. So, these will these other people's podcasts, will they be on your YouTube? Or are you going to make a different YouTube channel for them, or what's your plans there?
No, I actually upload them. They eventually will all, like children, go out on their own, I'm sure, and do their own thing. But I've approached each one of these people we've talked about, these great people with their own great careers, and I've just said, hey, I'll give you the radio airtime. You take one of my shows. And so I post them up under all my podcast sites, and they're also on the YouTube channels always. I imagine eventually, though, they'll all have their own platforms as well for each show. Yeah.
It's just the way things are going. I think traditional TV is basically, and a lot of people do, it's dead. But I thought that 16, 17 years ago.
You probably predicted the future. I mean, it's dead to me. I haven't subscribed to a cable channel for, I hate commercials.
Yeah.
I mean, who wants to watch commercials anymore? That whenever I have to watch something with commercials in it, I go nuts. I can't sit there that long.
Okay. So anyway, thanks so much, Jeremiah. So your podcast is called The Jeremiah Show. And where can I find this?
You can find it everywhere, that wherever you, as they say, get your podcast, you can find it. Really, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TalkShoe, Blueberry, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts. I mean, it's really wherever you decide. And if I'm not in Japan, I love Japan. I haven't been there, but I just love the culture. I love movies from Japan, and I'd love to have a presence there. So Mike, you can tell me where I should be, because I'd love to reach listeners in Japan. If I'm not on the right podcast site, we'll be there soon.
Yeah, all of these, well, we'll talk about it later, but all of these podcasts, they're like American.
Yeah.
So that's a problem, but I don't really know what to say about it. But anyway, Jeremiah-san, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This interview. So
thank you.
Everybody, check it out, The Jeremiah Show. He's got lots of famous people, fun talk, plays music. They play music on podcasts in the United States. So you can check it out. So thank you so much, Mr. Jeremiah Higgins.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.